She always played it safe, until I walked in. There are some moments in life that feel like lightning, bright, hot, impossible to ignore. The night I met her, it wasn't storming outside, but something inside me knew a storm was coming. Not the kind that shakes the walls or floods the roads. This one would break open everything I thought I knew about safety, about control, about desire. It started in the dull gray lobby of the community rec center, a building more known for bingo nights than life-altering encounters. I had signed up for a beginner's ballroom dance class on a dare. My best friend said I needed to soften up, get out of my head, do something with my body besides pace during weather alerts. I almost skipped it. Tornado season was ramping up, and I had a storm tracking van full of sensors calling my name. But something in me, maybe the weariness, maybe the hunger for connection, pulled me there. She was already inside when I walked into the studio. Brown hair tied up in a low bun, oversized sweater, posture like someone trying not to take up space. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, not in shyness but focus, like the floor might vanish if she looked away. I remember thinking she looked like someone who didn't just follow the rules but who had written them. Careful, quiet, probably an academic, the opposite of me, and maybe that's why I walked straight to her. "Do you want to dance?" I asked, offering a lopsided grin to soften the edges of my usually blunt tone. She blinked, startled. "I don't really know how." "Neither do I said. "That's why we're here." She gave the smallest laugh, one of those nervous little musical sounds that hint at something hidden under layers of fear. "I'm Lindsay." "Eden's," I replied. Our first dance was a disaster. She tried to lead and kept apologizing with every wrong step. Her palm in mine was trembling like a hummingbird's wing. I could feel the fear pulsing off her, not fear of me, but of exposure, of being seen. I pulled her a little closer. "Relax," I whispered. "It's just dancing." "You're not stepping on anyone's feet," she mumbled. "You haven't stepped on mine once." She looked up then, green eyes wide and unsure. But there was something else there too, a flicker of curiosity, a spark. We didn't talk much after class, but as we walked into the rain-soaked parking lot, I saw her struggling with her keys, already drenched. "My van's right here," I said. "Wait out the storm." She hesitated. "I don't usually." "Neither do I." A lie, I always chase storms. But this time, I wasn't talking about weather. She climbed in. The moment she sat among my blinking Doppler radars and lightning maps, she looked wildly out of place, like a butterfly in a wind tunnel. And yet, she didn't try to leave. She started asking questions. "You're a storm chaser," she asked. "Guilty. What gave it away?" She gestured to the live radar feed on my laptop. "The tornado footage maybe." I chuckled. "You." "Entomology research," she said softly. "Insects." "Bugs." "There's a difference." I laughed, she smiled, and that's when it started. Not love, not yet, but the first tremor, like the clouds above were gathering, like we were heading into something we couldn't see coming. The storm we couldn't predict. It was never supposed to become anything. That's what I told myself as I typed up weather data from our brief encounter. Just a dance class. Just a strange, quiet woman with a knowledge of insects and 1,000 walls behind her eyes. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way she stood so still inside the chaos of my storm-chasing van, as if trying to shrink herself smaller than the air. I'd seen plenty of strange behavior before a storm, barometric changes affecting animals, even people, but Lindsay Cooper was something else entirely. She was stillness in motion, a woman who seemed afraid of her own intensity, and I couldn't stay away. I showed up the next week to that same dance class, half hoping, half dreading that she'd be there. She was, same sweater, same soft hair pulled back like it was trying not to draw attention. But this time her eyes looked up the moment I entered, and for the first time she smiled before I did. Not the shy, careful smile from before, this one was real. A little messy. A little daring. My chest tightened with something I refused to name. We danced again, less awkward this time. She let me lead, finally. And in those quiet steps across the wooden floor, something began forming between us that neither of us had planned for. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was recognition. The kind that makes your breath slow and your thoughts race. The kind that makes the room feel different, charged. Later that night, over bad coffee at a diner that hadn't updated its wallpaper since the 80s. She told me she tracked insect migration using atmospheric pressure and electromagnetic fields. I told her about the way animals behave before tornadoes, the silence of birds, the strange agitation in cows. She leaned in, interested, curious in that way only a true scientist could be, her hand cupping her chin as she listened. "We should compare data," I said without thinking. "Your bugs and my storms." She blinked. "You're not joking." "No, I think we're working on the same thing from opposite sides." She looked at me for a long moment. "I don't usually collaborate." "Neither do I said, "but maybe we should." The next day, she emailed me a spreadsheet with migration patterns of butterflies and beetles. I sent her live pressure readings from my last chase near Kansas. 2 days later, we were back in my van, chasing a developing storm across the Colorado plains. And somewhere along that 2-lane highway, surrounded by thunder and wind, we stopped being just two scientists comparing notes. We became something more. The storm hit harder than we expected. Hail slammed the van roof. Lightning lit up the inside like a strobe. She was panicking, clutching the edge of her seat, staring out at the swirling sky with terror. "I've got you," I said, placing my hand gently over hers. She turned to me, eyes wide. "You're not scared." "I'm always scared," I said, "but that doesn't mean I stop." Her breathing slowed. The wind howled. The storm screamed. But inside that van, it was just the two of us, two scientists, two women, two storms colliding in a space too small to contain the pressure. And then she kissed me. It was quick, hesitant, like an accident she didn't want to admit had happened. Her lips brushed mine, soft and unsure, and then she pulled back fast, eyes wide with panic. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I don't know why I didn't let her finish. I kissed her back. And in that moment, something broke wide open. The air between us changed, not just electrically but emotionally. Like a dam had burst, and everything she'd been holding back came pouring out. She clung to me like she was drowning, and I held her like I didn't care if I sank with her. When the storm passed, we sat in the quiet, both of us trembling, not from fear, but from the realization that something irreversible had happened. "I've never kissed a woman before," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, really looked, and understood what she meant. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about one storm or one night. This was about her whole life, about everything she'd been taught to bury, to fear, to deny. "Then we start here," I said, "with what's real." She nodded, but the truth was, neither of us had any idea what we just started. The rules we never wrote. For a few weeks after that kiss in the storm, we pretended like we could keep everything separate. The research, the attraction, the slow unraveling of whatever walls Lindsay had spent years building. We set up equipment together. We tracked insect behavior alongside radar scans. We filed joint reports and responded to inquiries from skeptical universities wondering how two women from wildly different scientific disciplines were suddenly collaborating like a seasoned team. And yet, behind every spreadsheet and storm cell diagram, there was a tension neither of us dared to name out loud. It lived in the space between us in the van, in the brushing of hands over maps, in the way she'd glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking, like I was a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve, but couldn't stop staring at. She came alive in the field in a way that was surprising, even to her. The woman who once flinched at thunder now leaned out the van's window to collect real-time insect data while we sped toward the edge of a supercell. She stopped apologizing for stepping wrong, stopped holding herself back during conversations, and started arguing passionately about data models and predictive patterns. I saw it happening in real time, this shedding of old fears, this unfolding. And I was terrified. Not because she was changing, but because I was. She was drawing me into a world I had always avoided, one with roots, one with promises, one where someone might actually stay. And then came the regression session. It was supposed to be a formality, part of a university study on adrenaline, memory, and field decision-making under pressure. They hooked us up to biometric monitors, asked us to recall storm experiences, and then, out of nowhere, invited us into guided hypnosis. I agreed out of boredom. She agreed out of curiosity, but we both walked out changed. Lindsay's session dredged up a memory so raw it left her speechless for hours. Her father, a fellow entomologist, long presumed to have died in a car crash, had actually been killed during a research expedition. Army ants, she whispered, voice shaking, swarmed in the jungle while collecting aggressive behavior data. She was 7. Her mother had shielded her from the truth. And that fear of risk, of uncontrolled variables, had lived in her like a quiet ghost ever since. I held her while she cried that night, not saying anything. What could I say? I'd built a career out of chasing what her father died pursuing. When it was my turn, I laughed it off. Until I didn't. Under the soft hum of the psychologist's voice, I found myself reliving the endless string of base transfers, the broken promises of permanence, the half-packed boxes and abrupt goodbyes of military childhood. I remembered standing on a porch in Mississippi, waiting for a father who said he'd be home by sunset, who instead shipped off for another 6-month deployment. I remembered the ache of rooms that never became mine, friends I never got to keep. I remembered learning that if I didn't love anyone deeply, I'd never be hurt when they left. That's why I chased storms, because they didn't pretend to stay. They came, they screamed, they left, and I could handle that. When I opened my eyes, Lindsay was staring at me like she finally understood everything. Why I pulled close and then pushed away, why I flinched at softness, why I laughed too loud when things got serious. She didn't say anything that night, but her silence carried the weight of knowing. And then she disappeared. 3 days, no calls, no texts, no emails, just silence. I checked the lab, her apartment, even the dance studio. Nothing. Until one night, just past midnight, I walked into the entomology lab and found her there, crouched over a microscope, bathed in fluorescent light, wearing the same cardigan she'd worn the night we met. "You can't just disappear," I said from the doorway. She didn't look up. "I didn't disappear, I'm working." "No, you're hiding." "Maybe, can you blame me?" She finally looked up, eyes red from fatigue, not tears. "You basically admitted you expect me to leave." I sighed. I said I expect everyone to leave, not you. "But I'm not different," she whispered. "You treat me like a variable, like a storm to chase, not a person to keep." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She stood now, trembling but grounded. "Every time we get close, you retreat. Every time we talk about the future, you change the subject. I'm tired of being brave for both of us, Eden. I need to know this means something." I wanted to tell her everything. That she'd become the reason I slept through the night. That her voice calmed me in ways no silence ever had. That I had no idea how to be the person she needed, but I wanted to try. But instead, I said, "There's an F4 developing over Burlington tomorrow." She blinked. "So go." "I want you with me." "No." "Lindsay." "No," she said again, firmer this time. "I'm not risking my life for someone who doesn't know how to live." Her words hit harder than any storm ever had. I left without another word. I packed up the van, and I drove into that storm alone. When the storm took me, she ran toward it. I told myself I was chasing the Burlington supercell because it was the responsible thing to do, because the data mattered, because the university expected results, because the storm promised readings that could change the field forever. But the truth was uglier, smaller, more personal than that. I was running from the look in her eyes when she accused me of treating her like a temporary thing, running from the truth that I didn't know how to stay. Running from the fact that the storm inside me was always louder than anything outside. Marcus came with me reluctantly. He showed up beside the van before I could pull out of the campus lot, ribs still taped from our last chase, breath shallow but determined. "Heard you might need a partner," he said. She called me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "Lindsay called you." She said, and I quote, "Please go with her, she's going to do something reckless." And she was right. He studied me with that familiar blend of irritation and affection only old friends possess. "You're not yourself, Eden." "I am myself," I snapped, harsher than intended. "This is who I am." "Then maybe that's the problem," Marcus said quietly. I ignored him and drove. By the time we reached the outskirts of Burlington, the storm had matured into something monstrous. Even from 20 miles out, we could see the rotating wall cloud dipping low enough to graze the tops of abandoned silos. The sky was a sick, swirling green, the air too still, too heavy. I felt the familiar thrill, the dangerous excitement, but underneath it, something else twisted in my chest. An ache, a hollowness. A memory of green eyes in a lab at midnight, whispering, "I'm tired of being brave for both of us." Still, I pressed on. We positioned ourselves along an open stretch of farmland, the kind that looks harmless until the horizon bends into a funnel. The tornado began as a rope, twisting with eerie grace, then widened, fattened, grew into a wedge of rotating destruction tearing through wheat fields like tissue. My equipment screamed warnings. Barometric pressure readings plummeted. And still, I pushed us closer. "Eden, back off," Marcus yelled, bracing a hand against the dashboard. "This is too close, we need distance." "We need the core data," I insisted. "Just 2 more minutes." "This isn't about data," he shouted. "You're trying to prove something, and I don't think you even know what anymore." He was right, I knew he was right. But the storm was right there, breathing in front of us, powerful and unrestrained in ways I had spent my whole life chasing. And Lindsay was gone, and I didn't know how to face the emptiness she left behind. I pushed forward. The tornado expanded again, swallowing a cluster of trees like they were matchsticks. The air grew so tense with electricity that my teeth buzzed. Debris flew horizontally, slamming into the van. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but I refused until the world shifted. A satellite tornado, smaller but faster, dropped from the supercell's flank with violent suddenness, heading directly toward us. I barely had time to react before the wind punched the van sideways. Metal screamed, windows cracked, the ground vanished from beneath us. And then, impact, metal folding, glass shattering, the world turning upside down. When I opened my eyes, everything hurt. My left arm felt wrong, heavy, hot, throbbing. Blood trickled down my temple. The van was on its roof, Marcus moaning beside me, half-conscious, barely breathing. "We have to get out," I whispered, though my voice was barely audible over the storm's roar. But I couldn't move. My body refused. Pain screamed through every nerve. And for the first time in my life, with a tornado still raging somewhere nearby, I felt real fear. Not the adrenaline-fueled thrill of a storm chaser. Not the detached professional concern for equipment. But the cold, quiet terror of knowing I might die in a field with no one to hear me. And out of all the memories that should have flooded my mind, childhood military bases, storms I'd survived, near misses that defined my career, the only image that surfaced was Lindsay's face, trembling with exhaustion and hurt, whispering, "I can't keep loving someone who treats their life like it's disposable." I closed my eyes, dizzy, fading, and for a moment I wondered if this was it, if my obsession had finally caught up to me. Then I heard it. A voice, distant at first, rising through the wind like a miracle. "Eden!" I thought I was hallucinating, but then I heard it again, louder, rower, choked with tears. "Eden, Eden, answer me." I forced my eyes open. Through the cracked windshield, through the dust and the dying storm, I saw her running across the field. Hair loose, clothes soaked, mud on her knees where she must have fallen, tears streaking down her cheeks. She stumbled over debris, hands shaking, but she didn't stop. She ran toward the wreckage like she wasn't afraid of anything, not the wind, not her past, not what she might find inside. And in that moment, seeing her fight her way toward me, I realized the truth I'd been too afraid to admit. She wasn't running away. She was running toward me. She reached the van, dropping to her knees, hands pounding the metal. "Eden, please, please," her voice cracked. "I can't lose you, not like this, not after everything." Marcus stirred, groaning. She checked him first, always the scientist, but her eyes snapped back to mine the moment she saw I was conscious. "Oh God," she breathed, pressing her palm to the broken window. "Don't move, help is coming." "You came," I whispered, barely audible. "Of course I came." "Why?" Her face broke open with emotion. Fear, anger, love, all tangled together. "Because I love you, you idiot," she said. "And I refuse to let you die to prove a point you don't need to prove." Then the sirens grew louder. The storm faded. And I finally understood that sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't chasing what runs, it's choosing what stays. Choose me, or choose the storms. The hospital smelled like bleach and unfinished conversations. I drifted in and out of consciousness the first few hours after the wreck, machines humming beside me like soft warnings, my left arm throbbing in its cast, while the rest of my body floated somewhere between pain and regret. But it was the chair in the corner of the room that anchored me, because Lindsay was in it. Curled up with her knees to her chest, hair undone, still wearing the same jeans and rain-soaked flannel from the day she'd dragged me out of that crushed van in the middle of a storm's path. She hadn't left. Not even when she probably should have. When I finally opened my eyes, her face shifted with the force of emotion she tried and failed to contain. Her voice cracked as she whispered my name, and before I could say anything, before I could apologize, explain, promise, she gripped my hand like it was the only solid thing keeping her from falling apart. "You're awake," she breathed. "You're Jesus, Eden," I thought. "How long?" I rasped, my throat raw from the breathing tube they'd removed. 18 hours, she said, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You have a concussion, a fractured ulna, bruised ribs. Marcus has 3 cracked ribs, but he'll be okay." I nodded slowly, letting her words settle, but I could see the question in her eyes, the pain behind them. She wasn't just telling me I survived, she was asking why I kept trying not to. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "For nearly getting yourself killed?" she asked, voice flat. I turned toward her fully. "For being an idiot." That broke her. Her composure crumbled like sand in a fist, and she stood abruptly, pacing the room with arms crossed, trembling not from cold but from the fury of fear that still lived in her bones. "When Marcus called and said you were hurt, I thought I'd lost you. Really lost you. And all I could think about was how unfair it was that I let you go, how I walked away hoping you'd chase me, and instead you chased death. Again. I wasn't trying to die." "But you weren't trying to live either," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what it was like sitting in that ER, not knowing if you were even going to wake up?" She stopped pacing and turned to face me, arms trembling, jaw clenched. "My father died doing what he loved, out in the jungle chasing ants. That was his excuse. Passion, research, purpose, but none of that mattered after he was gone. None of it brought him back. He left behind a wife, a daughter, a silence I spent years filling with order and caution and distance. And then you came along, wild and brave and stupidly alive, and for the first time I wanted something uncertain. I let myself want you. And now I'm scared that if I keep loving you, one day I'll get a call that you didn't come back." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, unrestrained and ugly and beautiful. "I can't do this again, Eden. I can't love someone who treats their life like it's disposable." I sat up as much as I could, ignoring the pain, because her words hurt worse than any broken bone. "Please don't give up on me." "I'm not giving up," she said softly, approaching the bed again. "I'm asking you to choose, me or the storms." The room fell silent. All I could hear was the faint beep of the heart monitor beside me, proof I was alive, even if I hadn't acted like it. I looked at her, at the woman who had crossed every fear and every mile to pull me from the wreckage I'd caused. "That's not fair," I whispered. "Life isn't fair," she said, her voice breaking but firm. "My father chose research over family. You're choosing adrenaline over us. I won't stand by and watch you destroy yourself just to feel invincible." She bent down, kissed my forehead gently, a goodbye kiss if I'd ever felt one, then straightened. "I'll be here," she said, "when you're ready to really live, but I won't watch you die, not again." Then she walked out of the room, and this time I didn't stop her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew I hadn't earned the right to ask her to stay. Marcus appeared that evening, shuffling into the room with his ribs taped and an expression of exhausted disappointment. He didn't say much, just lowered himself into the chair Lindsay had left vacant and sat there watching me like I was a building about to collapse. "She's right, you know," he said after a while, his voice low. "You've been chasing like you've got nothing to lose, but you do, and if you don't see that, you're going to end up dead. And the worst part is, it won't even be surprising. It'll just be sad." I turned my face to the window, blinking away tears. The sky was clear now, the storm long past. "How do I fix this?" I asked. He shrugged gently. "Figure out what you're more afraid of, losing her or yourself." 3 days later, I was discharged with a battered body and a clearer mind. I didn't go home. I didn't turn on the weather feeds. I didn't even touch the van. I drove straight to her lab. She was there, as I knew she would be, buried in her work like it could somehow stitch shut the wound I had left in her heart. Her hair was pulled back in a messy braid, fingers stained with butterfly wing dust and ink from field notes. "I choose you," I said from the doorway. She froze, her hand paused over a microscope slide. Slowly, she turned, but her expression wasn't relief. It was guarded. "Eden's." "I choose us," I said, stepping forward. "I choose staying alive to build something with you instead of chasing death because I'm too scared to feel anything. You said you needed me to choose, so I am." "You can't just say it," she replied, voice quiet but strong. "You have to mean it." "I do." She studied me like I was a specimen under glass, not with judgment, but with precision, like she needed to see if this new version of me would hold up under pressure. Then she walked slowly around the lab table and stopped in front of me, her fingers just brushing mine. "Prove it." "How?" I asked. "Stay," she said. "Not just tonight, not just until the next storm. Stay in this. Stay with me. Stop running toward what could kill you and start building something that could save you." And when she kissed me, it tasted like forgiveness and second chances, like rain after drought, like finally arriving somewhere you didn't even know you were always meant to be. This time I stayed. Recovery wasn't cinematic. It was slow, repetitive, sometimes painfully quiet. The body healed faster than the mind. My arm, once braced and casted, grew stronger with each stretch and lift, but the trust I had fractured, hers and mine, took longer. Lindsay let me stay with her, but she didn't rush anything. She cooked breakfast in silence most mornings, occasionally sliding over a fresh list of safety protocols for storm chasing. I'd find them at the kitchen table beside my coffee, organized, printed, double-spaced, color-coded. No chasing alone. No engaging F3s or higher without team support. Mandatory GPS trackers active at all times. It read like a contract. But I knew what it really was, her way of saying she was willing to try again, as long as I didn't forget the cost of making her watch me almost die. I read her rules, and I signed them. Not just because I wanted her back, but because I finally understood why I was worth keeping alive. Because this wasn't about taming me. It was about grounding me. Loving her wasn't a cage. It was a compass. In return, I gave her my own list. Less clinical, more chaotic. My conditions. That she stop waiting for me to vanish. That she stop thinking she needed to handle me like a fragile storm system that could rip apart at any second. That she let me show her, not just say, that I had changed. We called it the Storm Treaty. It was ridiculous, it was real, and it saved us. 2 weeks later, we went out into the field again together. Not to prove anything, not to chase death, but to observe. A modest supercell danced along the edge of the horizon near Lemon, nothing catastrophic, nothing record-breaking, but it was enough. Her butterflies predicted every shift in pressure 5 minutes before my radar even caught it. She stood beside me on the hill, wind pulling at her hair, and for the first time since we met, I saw no hesitation in her eyes. Only fire. "You trust me now?" I asked. She didn't answer, she just reached for my hand. That night, she showed me her new butterfly mapping model. It tracked not just migration but behavior when paired, when two specimens chose to fly together. "They find mates mid-journey," she explained, voice soft as she placed side-by-side photos of wing-marked monarchs. "They travel together, cross storms together. They rest, feed, migrate side by side. They even die together. But they don't separate unless one quits flying." I looked at her across the table. "You're not going to quit flying, are you?" She smiled, small and certain. "Not if you don't." We kissed that night like we were writing a new language, one made of gratitude, forgiveness, and a kind of raw honesty I hadn't known I was capable of. We made love slowly, reverently, like two people who knew exactly how much they almost lost. Her hands on me were steady now, confident, no longer trembling with fear. And I gave her everything, not just my body, but my weight, my breath, my silence. The storm chaser, who once ran from every attachment, now rested inside her arms like it was the safest place on Earth. 3 months later, the university approved a joint research center. Meteorology and entomology combined, our names listed side by side on the project title, the Alexander Cooper Atmospheric Behavior Institute. I stared at the document for a long time, heart pounding like it was trying to burst through my ribs. All those years I spent refusing to put my name next to anyone else, and now, I wanted it etched beside hers forever. That same week, she stood by the window in our shared apartment, flipping through storm footage while sipping her tea, her messy bun slanted sideways and her glasses slipping down her nose. I watched her like she was a sunrise, slow and quiet and worth waking up early for. "I have to ask you something," I said. She turned. I pulled the velvet box from my pocket. Lindsay's eyes widened, color draining from her face as she froze in place. I opened it slowly, revealing a delicate ring, a silver band set with a storm-colored sapphire, deep blue with streaks of gray that shimmered like clouds. "You're joking," she whispered. "I've never been more serious," I said. "I don't just want to chase storms with you. I want to build a life with you. A boring, beautiful, messy, data-filled, rain-soaked life where I come home to you after every single one." She covered her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. "Marry me, Lindsay Cooper. Let's make this official. Let's make this permanent." She laughed through her tears, stepping forward to hold my face in her hands. "You realize you just proposed with storm metaphors. Would you have said yes if I did?" She kissed me, fierce and soft, trembling and sure all at once. And then she said the word I never thought I'd get to hear. "Yes." We didn't plan a big wedding. It didn't feel right. Instead, we rented the same dance studio where we met, where I first asked her to dance without knowing it would change everything. Adeline, the elegant instructor with silver hair, officiated with tears in her eyes, reading vows we wrote ourselves. "I promise," I said, holding Lindsay's hands under soft evening light, "to never treat my life like it's disposable again, because I've finally found something worth living for." And she, her voice cracking, whispered, "I promise to keep flying beside you, even when the winds get rough. You don't scare me anymore, you ground me." Marcus stood as my best man, beaming with pride. Her mother cried during the vows. A dozen mutual colleagues cheered. The butterflies we released at the end took flight as the clouds rolled in overhead, promising a storm we wouldn't chase. We stayed. The night after the wedding, I lay with her in our new shared home, the one with space for her specimens and mine. The kind with a reinforced storm shelter in the basement and a garden blooming with milkweed for migrating monarchs. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't have to. She fell asleep with her head on my chest, her hand draped over my ribs like she was making sure I stayed put. And I did. For once in my life, I didn't run. Outside, thunder rumbled, but I didn't move. The storm could wait. Because this time I stayed.